Welcome back to Naval News, everyone. Today's Naval News comes at us from navalnews.com with an article written by the Naval News staff. Title, Australia to build a $10 billion base for the nuclear submarines. Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison unveiled plans for a new submarine base on the country's east coast worth roughly $10 billion to support the Royal Australian Navy's planned nuclear submarine fleet, he says. So give you some history here. Last year, Australia revealed its intention to acquire at least 8 nuclear-powered submarines as part of the newly created AUKUS pact. That's a pact with the United Kingdom and the United States and Australia. String them together, AUKUS. Prime Minister Morrison stated yesterday that the decision to create the base on the East Coast has been in the works for many years. They were going to do that anyway, even with the old program they had with Naval Group. And the transition to Collins-class submarine fleet. So this is going to be a base that's in addition to the current base that they have and the facility at Adelaide. All those facilities will remain unchanged. They will still exist. This is going to be a brand new naval base that they're going to build. And that's kind of why the price tag is as high as it is, because you're going to have to develop new lands, build new waterfront, put out some piers, put a power plant on it, and this whole facility is going to be alone extremely expensive. And that $10 billion, that's just the starter fee. That gets you going. This is going to be a 20-year project, and it may honestly take longer than that. Depends on how far they want to go with this, because they may not stop at 8 nuclear submarines. Eight nuclear submarines is the first order of the nuclear submarines for Australia. Back to the piece, the Prime Minister is quoted as saying the government has now determined that to support our decision to acquire nuclear-powered submarines, establishing a second submarine base on our East Coast will enhance our strategic deterrent capability with significant advantages in operational, training, personnel, and industrial terms. Based on early estimates, we've provisioned nationally more than $10 billion to meet the facilities and infrastructure requirements for future transition from Collins to the future nuclear submarine program over the next 20 years. That includes, but is not exclusive to, the submarine base. So some of that $10 billion can go to other things as well. But I'm telling you, building this waterfront, building this base, depending on how big they want to go with it, could eat up a lot of that $10 million alone. The present Collins-class submarine fleet is in Royal Australian Navy, is based out of the Fleet Base West, HMAS Stirling on Garden Island in Western Australia. The proposed East Coast base, according to the Prime Minister, is not replacing those facilities. So they're going to end up with 2 bases, which makes sense. You don't want to have the majority of your Navy and the entirety of your submarine fleet, which arguably is the most important part of your Navy, in my opinion, in one base. It's like putting all your eggs in one basket. Spread them out, 2 different locations, hundreds of miles apart. Very smart to do that. The Australian government has designated 3 potential locations that we're going to look at today. We're going to look at Brisbane, Australia, Newcastle, and Port Kembla. All those are on the east coast of Australia. Geographic requirements that we're going to look at here is closeness of industrial infrastructure, arguably the most important part, because you don't want to have to build up a whole new industry around this. It would be nice if you had industry in place already that you could then expand on. That saves you both money and time to do that. Training facilities are very important. We're going to look at colleges and universities. What kind of graduates are they going to provide that can then go and engineer these submarines and work on them? Weapon storage facilities are something that the government's going to look at. That's not public information, so we can't look at that. Proximity to large population centers for staffing, very important. You want this to be near where people don't have to drive 100 miles to go to work, because that's not going to happen. So you have to keep in mind, where are the people living now? And usually, if you have a good industrial infrastructure and good colleges and secondary schools, you'll probably have a large population for staffing. Those kind of go together. So that's kind of what we're looking for here. Access to sufficient water depths, very important. Average submarine for a nuclear submarine is between 25 and 30 feet draft. So you want, a draft access of at least 40 feet to give you lots of clearance in and out of port. Other location assessments will be completed by the end of 2023. And I'm sure they're going to have lots of civil engineers that are going to write very long proposals and white papers justifying one of these bases over the other. But we're going to do our own little amateur analysis of these 3 sites, looking at these requirements and see what we think is the best. All right, let's bring up Google Maps. which is a great, great tool. And here we have the continent of Australia. Now, all these bases are going to take place between up here in the north in Brisbane, and then we have Newport, which is right about here, Newcastle rather. And then we have Port, where's that? Here it is. Port Kembla is just south of Sydney. So there's two main water areas here. They have the actual harbor that is probably going to be used, but they also have this lake here that, you know, you could probably build a really nice waterfront here if you can get in and out of it. But obviously the access into this lake is way too shallow. It's essentially a tidal basin that at low tide has hardly any water at all in it. So you would have to dredge an enormous amount of material to make this even close to being deep enough. And really the thing that stops this from being in Port Kembla, and the reason why this won't work besides it being way too shallow, and we'd have to dredge an enormous amount of material here to get it to be greater than 30 feet of depth, is look at this bridge. If we put our point of view right there on the shore and we turn around, look at how shallow this bridge is. I mean, here is water at high tide will come to about here, right where my cursor's at, and there's no clearance. There's no way you're getting a ship, a tugboat, and certainly not a submarine beneath this bridge. So this bridge would have to be removed and rebuilt, and, you know, it's just not worth it. So not only are you dredging this area, you know, you're going to completely move this causeway-style bridge that appears to be very busy. So putting in that lake, obviously not an option, not even. But what is likely is right here. This is the Port of Kembla. The Port of Kembla already has an established waterfront. It has a protected harbor. These man-made jetties are what protects the harbor. If you notice here, even on this very windy day, the currents and the sea state that's out here is significantly reduced in here. And that's partially because of this water break right here. You can see how the waves are crashing on this jetty, and that's absorbing all the energy and leaving the areas inside the protected harbor much more calm. And this is what you want anytime you have a harbor. That's why it's like that. This opening, plenty wide for shipping of all sorts and sizes. And you actually have free area of waterfront here. This is undeveloped waterfront. We're going to do a quick measurement here of distance between this pier and say over to probably this jetty here. So we're talking 2,000 rather, between 1,800 and 2,000 feet of waterfront. You could essentially, if you imagine this concrete, you know, facility here, just extend this pier-like structure, this waterfront caisson, and just put it down this way. You know, concrete this entire area and make this a waterfront with facilities for supply and support and maintenance depots, garages, and stuff all along here. All right, so. All along, this would be like a fence line. This would become a naval base. You would have to, for barracks and whatnot, move out into the city outside the waterfront. This would become what we know in the United States as a controlled industrial area. And then outside the controlled industrial area, you would have the naval facilities. And not sure what's here now. Obviously, there's clearly some major infrastructure here. But they could integrate the naval base into this area. That's not as complicated as it seems. What is really important here is that they actually have waterfront space to work with. So Port Kembla is looking as a very good choice right now. Now they want to build 8 submarines, so you're going to want to have at least 2 piers. Here you can see the size of this pier here. Imagine having 2 of these piers, one right here jutting this way, and one next to it jutting this way. And so you could put 4 submarines on one pier, 4 submarines on another pier. You could also double breast submarines if you need to, but you do want to have at least 2 piers because they'll have 2 different power sources. So if you lose power on one pier, you don't lose the power on the other pier. And each pier will have redundant power sources, of course. But you don't want to put all of your submarines on one pier because pier traffic is very important. Let's look at this pier right here. You see how we have this ship pier that's got empty holes in it. So in order to fill it up again, if it's loading, let's say it's loading, well, they need to crane out, trains worth of whatever, iron ore or whatever it is, out onto this pier and begin loading it, right? Well, you need to have a pier that's wide enough to have 2 vehicles abreast, which this one does have. This is a great example. So you can work on one side of the pier and the other side, both sides of the pier at the same time. So this is an ideal location. A lot of submarine piers, because of lack of water space, don't have enough width to support more than one vehicle on the pier at the same time, side by side. So you're going to want to take that into consideration if you're going to put submarines on both sides of the pier. That becomes a coordination issue that you have to work with your other submarines that are sharing the pier with you as to who gets access to the, to the light water truck, or the pure water truck, they call it. Yeah. You also have diesel fuel oil trucks that need to come on, because even though it's a nuclear submarine, it still uses diesel fuel because you have a diesel engine as a backup and all sorts of things. So anyway, Port Kembla, great component, great location. Let me take a look real quick. Let me open up another window here. Let's look at the population of Port Kembla, Australia. So here is a concern, is Port Kembla itself, the suburb itself, it's not very large, but only has, according to this, 5,000 people as of 2016 census. We'll say that's a lot more now. Probably, if you just look at the housing alone, it looks like it's much more than 5,000 people. So that's grown significantly. But 5,000 people is not a lot of people. They probably need to do another census, though, if you just judge by the size of the housing around it. Plus, you do have Sydney up here. Like I said, it's a 30-mile commute one way, 60-mile round trip. That's an hour in your car minimum. So that's an extra hour of work to your day. So you're working an 8-9 hour shift plus an hour drive, round trip, 10, 11 hour day. That's very exhausting. It's hard to maintain that lifestyle. People do it, but it is exhausting. Okay. So what about universities? Because Sydney is so close, I'm going to say they're probably good to go on universities, because they have also Canberra is not too far away either. Right there. This is the capital. So you have your universities there and universities in Sydney that can support, the development of the submarines over time. So that's not a big deal. So overall, I'd say our first look at Port Kembla is our top choice so far. Let's take a look at the next city. What was the next one on the article? What did they say? Okay. Here we go. We got the article back now. The second city is Newcastle. So we're going to go north of Sydney to Newcastle. Newcastle is right here. So Newcastle has a lot of waterfront on the ocean side here, but you're not going to want to put a naval base on the ocean side of your continent. You're going to want to have a protected harbor for it. So here they have the jetties coming out to an inlet to a protected harbor here. And here you can see all the harbor facilities. They have lots of housing on this side, so that's obviously civilian side. These are parks. Not enough room to, say, make this the naval base because housing is too close there. So you really need to look on this side and just see if there's any waterfront that is available. Maybe not all this is being used, even though it is developed. You could use existing structures to support your naval base. But what I don't see here is a lot of rooms for piers. So what you could do is moor your submarines alongside. Like here's a waterfront right here. So let's see if we can put a point of view down here. Will they let us? We can put one right here. This will give us an idea of what buildings we're talking about here. Oh no, this is a tourist area. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure these condos are probably worth a lot of money, and people are not going to want to be kicked out of their condos for a submarine base. That is not an option. What do we have here? This looks like a parking area that's disused. It's a car park for something. Now, the reason it may not be used is because of the COVID restrictions, and that's probably when these photos were being taken. So, yeah, this is being developed already. So this could be more condos, but there's already construction happening here. So it is unlikely that whatever this is going to be taken over by the government. They certainly could, but they would have to pay through the nose for this type of waterfront access. And nobody wants a big naval base in front of their $1 million waterfront condos. So there'd be some pushback there. Yeah, there sure would be. Can we close this? We can. All right, so even though that's a good location, it looks like it's already being developed. And since there's condos over here, there's probably going to be condos over there. And this is a private yacht club. They're not giving up their yachts, and those piers wouldn't work for nuclear submarines anyway. So we do have this base in here. This is excellent. This is, all these buildings are tore down. So this would be a good part for it. And this is you could build a dry dock here with this is a loading area, a launching area to launch it right into the water. This would be an ideal location for the submarine base. Just put it right there. And instead of building piers, you would just use, extend this waterfront. You build up the waterfront here and park alongside, 1 submarine, 2, 3 submarines. And then over here on this side, you could have another one, a 4th one, And you would have dry dock facilities as well. This is really good because you're going to need a long-term depot level maintenance facility. Let's see. This is Thales, Newcastle. So Thales being a military industry company, they perhaps maybe even own the land here. I don't know. But you see this open area here? Yeah. What does this sign say? There's nice little gates here. It says keep out restricted area. It does say private property, so that is owned by somebody. Keep out construction site. Yeah. Don't know who it's owned by, but the government could certainly use part of that $10 billion to buy this. And it says private property, not public, so we're not government property. So that could be owned by Thales. It could be owned by the people that like to build the condos here. Either way, they're going to have to buy this land if they want to put it there. Everything else appears to already be in use. But they do have lots of waterfront. There's lots and lots of waterfront here. If we move up north here, these are spilling areas for different materials. Holding areas, storage areas, whatever we're going to call it. And then finally we get into housing again. You wouldn't want to go that far upriver unless you really had to. That's not ideal. What's this? This is all swampland. This is a dike, and oh my gosh. So that's not good. That's spilling out there. Is that sunk? No, it's not sunk. Okay. We have some waterfront here. What about this? So you could develop this waterfront. How much room are we talking about here? Let's measure distance from here to the road. Yeah, that's only 400 feet. So that's not enough room to really do anything with, But it does look like they do have if they wanted to build a small base and have potentially a dry dock with a launching ramp right there, they already have that constructed for them. They could make this a very small naval base. There's not a whole lot of room to expand, though. That's it. Yeah. But they do have the infrastructure right here, including a military contractor right there. So that's not bad. I'd say that's my number 2. Newcastle's not as good as Port Kembla. Finally, let's move up north to Brisbane. Where's Brisbane at? Gold Coast. Here it is, Brisbane. So Brisbane, very large city, big touristy town. Beautiful place in Australia. So let's see what kind of protected waterways they have. So they appear to have this big bay. It's called Moreton Bay. So inside Moreton Bay, because it's a big developed area, there's already a lot of housing along the coastline. So there doesn't appear to be much available coastline down along the south. We do have something here. This looks like a cemetery. What are these fields? What is this? Okay, I'm just curious if this is even a viable option. Let's put our dude here. What is this? Is it a golf course? I'm not sure what's going on here. It's not a cemetery. It just looks like a big park. Okay, so a good use of public land would be to take a park and maybe turn it into a naval base. So beginning here, they do have available waterfront if they wanted to use this. The problem is that the industry that you want to connect to your naval base is up here. So let's move away from that and do our amateur analysis kind of up here. Aha, look at this. Here we go. Here we go. These are basins of some kind. You could, this would take a lot of work, but you could dredge and extend this peninsula and put the base out here. I'm curious as to what kind of, what is this? Let's just take a look around. Oh, it already has buildings on it. Oh, look at the construction here. This is insane. Yeah. So yeah, basically keep going. Like, you see the construction that they're doing here? Well, do this in this direction and build that way and make this your naval base up there, your submarine base. That's one option. That would be very expensive because you have to dredge and build out your peninsula. This peninsula here, to me, looks like a man-made peninsula. Like, the natural peninsula stops somewhere around here, and they've extended it artificially out this way. They just need to keep going. But that takes a long time, and it takes a lot of money to do that. Now, if we look at the harbor where the ships pull in, cargo ships, see if there's any available waterfront here. This would be a better choice because it would be faster and it would save some money. And yeah, they have plenty of room here in Brisbane. Plenty of room along the waterfront to develop all this. So they don't even need to worry about that peninsula. Look at this. All this could be developed. This is actually bigger than they had in Port Kembla in terms of area. So, and look at the population center. They have plenty of people. Brisbane. How many schools are in Brisbane? Let's take a look at that. Let's see what we got here. Let's go with Colleges of Brisbane, Australia. Just there. As long as they have a couple major ones, they should be 25 major universities in Brisbane. Okay, great. So as far as that goes, they've got all their infrastructure that they need right here for naval infrastructure. They have lots of population for staffing. They have lots of universities for highly educated and skilled workers. Brisbane, by far, is my first choice because you can get started right away. You don't need to do a lot of work. The land itself is available. You know, you're not having to negotiate with a condo company or a tourist development company, you know, to pay the higher premium, right? You can probably get this land much less than you would if you were trying to buy a land where they're building condos, is my point. And it meets all the other wickets. Having a deep water access, very important. Hell, it's got a major airport right close to get, you know, quick deliveries via air if you need to. So that is great. I would say Brisbane, definitely my first choice. Port Kembla, second choice. And then Newcastle would be my last choice. And that doesn't mean Newcastle's a bad choice. It just means it's not as good as Brisbane, that's for sure. Brisbane's looking really promising there. All right. Well, let me know what you guys think. Feel free to do your own amateur survey using Google Maps or any other mapping tool that you prefer. Put your comments down below. Leave a like for the video, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.